Now, in a moment, we meet a woman who is part of a growing movement that believe the key to a happy marriage is always putting their husband's needs before their own. And the cruelty of the illegal dog smuggling trade. We talked to an owner who had to have her puppy put down just 3 days after bringing her home. Hashtag #TradWives is a growing movement of women who promote ultra-traditional gender roles. Search it on social media and you'll see images of cooked dinners and freshly baked cakes with captions like, "A woman's place is in the home," or "Trying to be a man is a waste of a woman." Alina Pettit describes herself as a traditional wife. She says it's about submitting to and spoiling her husband like it's 1959. In a moment, I'll talk to Alina and feminist Vicki Psarias about whether TradWives are reversing progress on women's rights or whether it's an example of feminism, because choice is the most important thing. First, though, BBC Stories spent time with Alina.
I wouldn't kind of expect my husband to come home from a long day's work and have to cook for me, because my role is being at home. My job is essentially housework. So I choose what we eat, where I buy it, how much I spend on things, and so that's a monthly allowance, if you want to give it that kind of phrase. There's always a bit of a buffer in there for me to spend something on myself, so that I'm not always asking him for money. When I was at school, I don't think I was particularly a popular girl. The culture at the time was anything but what I enjoyed, and it definitely made me feel like an outsider. It was all kind of like, let's fight the boys and go out and be independent and break glass ceilings. But I just felt like I was born to be a mother and a wife. What I really related to were the old shows of kind of like the 1950s and 60s, I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched. I grew up in a single parent household, and my mum had to go out to work. The home became just this huge burden for her. And I suppose at that point in time, I probably identified that I didn't want that same life. The rebellion really came when I met my husband. And he being very traditional as well, I think he just identified that. He said, "I know that you want a man to look after you and to make you feel secure," and he offered himself as that person. And as soon as that happened, I just was like, finally someone sees it, you know, finally I can be myself. I don't have to hide who I am anymore. It's almost like the fairy tale came true.
Well, what do you think? Fairy tale or nightmare? Alina is with us with feminist writer Vicki Psarias, who runs a parenting blog called Honest Mum. Welcome, both of you.
Hello. Thank you.
So, Alina, this is the fairy tale for you.
It is, absolutely, yes.
Work incompatible with being a mum and a wife?
No, I don't think so. Not at all. But just the dynamic that I personally want for my family, and also the dreams I had growing up, never really went away. I actually worked in London for quite a few years, doing the commute. And I just was not embracing kind of my soul's desire. I grew up in a generation where I was told I had to go and break glass ceilings, that being a housewife wasn't good enough. A teacher even asked me once what I want to be when I was older. And you think kind of, you know, far in the future. I said to her, I want to be a wife and a mum. And I was laughed at by a teacher who is supposed to kind of support us in our dreams. And I just felt like the generation I grew up with was, you can be anything you want to be, except for that.
So, there are obviously a lot of people who would say this is anti-feminist.
Yeah.
Would you say it's feminist because you're making a choice?
Definitely.
Would you, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what people get so confused by. It's funny, the kind of, you know, examples that you made of women should be in the kitchen. I personally have never used those phrases. I understand with the movement, you know, there's kind of like polar opposites. The people that are really staunchly kind of trad wife, as it were, might say those things, but you know, it's a spectrum. We identify.
Is it fair to say you do everything at home?
Yes, absolutely. Well,
does your husband lift a finger to do anything?
Yeah, to put up shelves, lift heavy things. You know, kind of. That's the thing. I'm physically capable of doing those things. Do I want to do them? No. He's physically capable of cooking. He's actually great at cooking, but he works such long hours for us. And actually, my talents lie in domesticity and cooking, and I love it. I could cook all day and bake all day, so I want to do that. And it's also an act of service for my husband, and it's a way I demonstrate and show love.
Is it servitude?
So, No, not at all, because I'm wanting to do it. It's actually my choice. That's a feminist thing.
Vicky, what do you think?
So I think this is not about getting at stay-at-home mums. Feminism is about equality, and I champion the choice. Lots of women don't have the choice, but if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I think that this movement can be quite dangerous. We are still 100 years away from the gender pay gap closing. I think that this thing about submission, if you look at some of the values, it says, behave childlike to my husband, all of these things. We're not 1950s housewives, and we're trying to move towards flexible working and greater maternal rights and equality, and we're so far from that. And if you look at the Me Too movement and things, this feels so, you know, it's not progressive, it's taking us massively backwards.
While we're in a period of transition then, do you think there is a lot of pressure on women to, as Alina indicated, effectively have it all? You know, work,
of course,
be a
there's
mum,
huge
be a
amounts
wife.
of pressure. I think
Something
this is
has to
why
give in the end, doesn't
I've
it?
written a book called Mum Boss, which is about how to juggle those things. I work flexibly, I work remotely, I can work part-time one week, I can work more intensely the next. You know, I mean, you're a former actress, aren't you? And you've written a book as well. So there's lots of, there's nothing, I think that things have to change with legislation. I think the workplace has to change to help people like us so we're better supported. I'm concerned about who are these men that want women to bow down to them and put slippers in front of the five of them. None of the men I know want that. It's, you know.
Yeah, well, that's funny that you raised that, because my husband didn't outright say he wants that. It's just a conversation.
But you do put his slippers out?
No, of course not. He doesn't even wear slippers.
She just put that on Instagram.
That's the thing. I'm kind of, you know, it's a light-hearted way to approach it. You know, you get these kind of doctrines of what you're supposed to do as a 1950s housewife. Clearly, I don't identify physically.
You don't dress like one.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a very modern person. I have, you know, rights within my marriage. We bounce ideas off each other. My husband runs his own business, so he often comes to me. It's not like I had a lobotomy and, you know, did away with all of my experience working.
What if you found yourself on your own for whatever reason?
In terms of what?
Well, divorce?
Divorce, I would go back to work. But for the moment, I am enjoying the lifestyle that I'm leading. And I get messages every single day from women all over the world who say, I really want this too, but I feel ashamed.
There shouldn't be any shame. That's really sad. There's no. It's the hardest job of all to be a stay-at-home mum.
Yes.
There's no shame in that. I absolutely value that and think that we should be viewing stay-at-home mums as equally as women that work. But some of these values are highly problematic for women as a whole. They are not. You know, they're not progressive. They are putting us. We are struggling massively as women. It's not that long ago women died for you know, to vote. What? How does this fare?
How do you see, though, Alina? I just wanted to ask you actually about the hierarchy, if there is one in your household, because you've got a son.
Yes.
And he's sort of lower in the pecking order. Is that fair to say? You put your husband first?
Well, I wouldn't say he's lower in the pecking order. You know, all of our needs need to be met, but he is there because of my husband and I. I have witnessed what happens when some women have children and they make their life all about the children, and the husband is still working and still providing for that family, but the romance is gone between the husband and the wife. And I think it's really important to keep that romance alive, and for him to know that he's still just important to me today as he was when we were first dating and when we were newly married. So that's where I'm coming from with regards to that. It's not about my son, you know, he can, you know, take the scraps and the crumbs from under the table. Okay. You know, I love him just as much. But my husband is still there. He's still a person. He's still very valid and very needed.
That's assuming that women that work don't think that, though.
I'm not assuming that.
Yeah. But it's like saying that you're not going to have time for your husband or you don't value him. I mean, I would definitely say my kids come, sorry, Peter, above my husband. But, you know, what do you think about the more extreme women, though, that are saying, let's be submissive? Because that's what I find highly sort of worrying.
I must say, I kind of don't agree with that myself, you know. I think we're in a really great position at the moment, is that, you know, I can go out to work if I want to, I can have a career, and I can stay at home if I want to. I think what I'm feeling and where I'm coming from is the fact that it's less represented, not very well supported, and I have had incidents after incidents of being shamed for it, you know, and people say to me, especially when my son went to school, when's Alina going to go back to work? You know, like, and it's, do I have to? And it's nobody's business particularly, whether I go back to work or not, but that's what's expected of women.
Sure, loads of comments coming in on this. Bryony on Twitter, if I want to cook and clean for my fiancé, I will. That's my choice, my feminist choice to decide what I do with myself. My partner and I split our dinner and laundry duties, but I'll do it all if he's busy on the farm and I can't help. That's only fair. Dr. Saeed on text, trad wives don't think it's going backward. This will bring more stable families, less stress, well-groomed and responsible children. Male member of family should also support wife as and when they can, like giving them a leisure day over the weekend, sharing work. Christian on email, I'm an aircraft engineer, my wife a part-time nurse. We both work shifts and also have an 8-year-old daughter. We share our roles in the kitchen. I'm up for work at 5 a.m. I get home at 6 p.m, 6:30 p.m. By this time of the day, my wife has already cooked our daughter's dinner and has her ready for bed before I get home from work. When I get home, it's straight into the kitchen and start cooking our evening meal. It's a dual role, which works perfectly, and we both share our responsibilities equally. Denver on Twitter, any woman or man who wants to stay at home should not be criticised. When will we evolve to accept the differences between male and female? Keeping a home isn't hard work. Some feminists are bullies. We've got so many coming in. I'll just read a few more. Janet on text, what are these women running away from? Either they're too scared to join in the real outside world, or they're idle and settle for a repetitive, dull and easy round of housework, shopping, etc. without any responsibility. Have they no pride? Housework is not easy.
It's not easy.
Just to say, it's not all that's involved. But Michael on text, my personal experience is the more my wife puts me first, the more I put her first. If the relationship is one of captain and first officer, then a complementary team is created. Sadly, destructive relationships today, often leading to divorce, are when both are trying to be captains. Call me old-fashioned, but a traditional wife should bring out the quality in her husband of being a loving, protective hunter-gatherer. What do you think about those?
I personally agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you both very much. And you can watch the full film about Alina on the BBC News website under the BBC Stories section.